Howdy y'all, welcome back to Camp Shack Productions. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the two different types of tents that I have right here. This is what's called a freestanding pole tent, and this is a trekking pole tent. And what the difference is this tent right here, which is the One Tigress Backwoods Bungalow. It is $119 right now on Amazon. And it is set up by using your trekking poles and by tying it out with guidelines to hold it up. This, however, is the Mountain Hardwear Aspect 3-person tent. They say that this is for 3 people. I can tell you, after setting it up and being inside of it for a little while, I would not recommend putting 3 people inside of this. But this is a really, really nice 3-person tent that only weighs 3 pounds, 10 ounces. It is a freestanding, which means that once you put the poles into the base, it seats into it, and that's what gives the tent structure, and it'll stand on its own, no matter what surface it's on. This tent is a $550 backcountry tent, and it weighs 3 pounds and 10 ounces. Again, the Backwoods Bungalow, One Tigress, this is a really nice tent. However, it is difficult to set up in very sandy conditions, and it is much harder to set up on, for example, a piece of slick rock, like in the middle of the Utah desert, which is where I do most of my camping. This tent would be great to set up inside or in a forest area. It's really nice if you have a lot of tree limbs that you could use, because instead of using trekking poles, you could actually just cut branches long enough to be your pole support. And then everything in this tent has to be guided out. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 guide out points that pretty much all have to be taught to get this tent to use for its maximum performance. Right now, I can't pull out the back because I have a wall right there. So that means that this tent is actually much smaller than it normally is. When you pull out the back, it opens up the inside quite a bit. And this would be great for 1 person and a dog, or maybe 1 person and a small kid. I would say no bigger than probably a 10-year-old. If even there, you're gonna be tight inside of this tent right here. But it's really nice, and it's $119 on Amazon right now, so it's very affordable. It is a single layer tent. I do not have any idea how waterproof it is. If you've used this tent in an extremely wet conditions, please leave a comment and let me know how it does in the water. I can tell you I've slept in this in very cold temperatures, and because it's a single wall tent, when you have it all closed up, it does create quite a bit of condensation. I had a huge layer of ice all the way across the top of this tent. Once I used it, it was 23 degrees that night. So if you use a down sleeping bag, be careful. It definitely will drip out as it dries. If you were gonna leave this tent standing for a couple days and it got really cold at night, I would pack up your sleeping bag inside of a dry bag so that condensation, once it warms up in the day, does not drip off. It also has this huge vestibule piece that comes out. These ends pull out and it can zip down and close it off, or you can bring it out and actually put more poles in, and it creates kind of like a porch area that would be protected from the weather. You can close one side, you can keep both of them down, you can keep both of them open. This tent's pretty versatile, it's really cool. And if you actually had a top line here, if you had something that was going across, you could tie into it. It's definitely a cool bushcrafting style tent, and would be awesome in the middle of the mountains, where you can use trees and all kinds of different items to do what this tent actually does. I set it up in Canyonlands on a piece of slick rock, and it was difficult. Kind of like in here, I had to have stacks of rocks to get this tent to set up. And even figuring it out in my basement here, it probably took me about 20 minutes. So there are some drawbacks. You definitely have to know how to set this tent up. I would highly recommend practicing if you buy this tent before you go out into the middle of nowhere and you're like, what are all these ropes? How do all these guide wires work? Set it up somewhere and test it. But once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty easy, especially if you can drive a stake in the ground. Where I was in Canyonlands, I was on a piece of slick rock. So I had to use nothing but rock anchors to guide this whole thing out. And it was more complicated. I had huge stacks of rocks all around the tent, which really isn't the safest, but It works good. It's a great little tent, and it's very affordable. So let's talk about this. This Mountain Hardwear tent is awesome. It's really, really nice. It's very expensive. It's $550. But again, once you put the poles in, it seats at the corners. And once you've done that and you clip in, this tent is standing. You can pick it up and move it. You can pick it up and shake it out. It all stays together because of the pole framework here. And that's why it's called a freestanding tent. Once you put the poles in, it stands freely. It does have a lot of guidelines. It is also a double wall tent. So what that means is you've got an inner layer and then you've got a rain fly that goes over the top. This is only one layer. There is no second backup, which does a little bit better in cold weather, and it'll keep the condensation on the fly, not on the inside of the tent. Same thing though, if you're in really cold weather and you have a down sleeping bag, make sure you roll that thing up and put it away if you leave your tent up during the day and it's going to get warm, because that condensation will drip through. And once your down gets wet, it's really, really not a very good insulator. These are super easy. Once you do have the fly down or on top of this and you have it all staked out or at least rocked out, just like this tent, you want to make sure that you pull all of the guides on everything to make this tent tight. That's what gives these new tents. They're so lightweight. Again, I told you this tent is 3 pounds, 10 ounces. This is 3 pounds, 2 ounces with no poles. So for that extra money, you get a very lightweight, very large tent. I mean, it is really a good size for 2 people. 3, pushing it. 2, this is great. And if you split up the weight of the tent, you're really not carrying that much. You know, each of you is carrying, what, 1.5 pounds? Nothing really to get this thing out with you. But again, making sure that you have all of those guidelines pulled out, you've got everything taut. You want to really make sure that you rope these things out and stake them down. That's what gives them that rigidity and keeps the wind from pushing in. If you've ever seen a video where somebody's tent is blowing in on them, it's because they didn't guideline it out. You know, look at an Arctic video where they have their tent set up in the snow where it's really windy and cold and snowy. They have every single one of those lines coming off of these to create tension so that it holds it all together by pulling out, so that when it pushes in, it doesn't flex in on you. You can even see, like, this thing will flex in just with a little bit. This will flex in. Again, not if you really stake it out though, out in the outdoors. So there's benefits to both. This is really easy to set up anywhere. You know, I would say this tent would probably take you about 4 minutes to set up total. Even with all the guidelines, everything on it, really easy. This tent's gonna take you more time. You have to figure out how to stake it all out. You have to put in all the stakes first. You have to erect it in the correct way so that it all comes out. So, you know, with this tent, you're gonna pay that huge price tag, but you're gonna have a really nice tent that works great every time. With this tent, you never know. You have to be able to be skilled enough to be able to set it up. So there's trade-offs to both. I really enjoy using this tent. This one belongs to me. This is a buddy of mine, but I have a couple freestanding tents. They're just not as light as this one is. So you really kind of have to decide what you're looking for, figure out what kind of system you need. And you'll notice I never once said the word hammock. And we'll talk about that in a later video, why I choose to use a tent over a hammock, especially here in Utah. Well, you guys, I hope you like this content. I hope it helped you kind of decide, you know, do you want freestanding? Do you want something you have to work a little harder for? Do you want a little bit cheaper? Do you want to pay that one time and cry once? You know, something like this, if it rips, gets torn, you're probably not going to send it back and get it repaired. This one has a lifetime guarantee. They're going to fix it. Mountain Hardwear's got a great warranty system. So you know, it's kind of a trade-off. It's a catch-22. So you guys, if you like this content, please make sure you do all those button thingies, hit everything you're supposed to, do all the comment stuff. Let me know if you've used either one of these tents. If you use a freestanding tent or if you use a pole trekking tent and what you think the benefits are. Let's start a little dialogue about this. All right, you guys, see you in the next video. Be well, my friends.